Well, hello there, and welcome to the Trademarks Made Easy podcast. Today, I have Andy Hooper with me, and he's with Global E-commerce Experts Ltd, which focuses on helping sellers expand into the EU as seamlessly as possible. Thank you so much for being here, Andy.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you very much for having us. It's really exciting to be on.
It's more exciting for me.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see.
Tell me a little bit about Andy. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you a fun question about your business. So yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself, about you as a person and kind of how you got into this business. I always like to know people's background and what led them to where they are right now.
Yeah, fantastic. So based in London, now south of London here in the UK. You probably get that from my accent, I suppose. So yeah, we're based here in the UK, and yeah, I've lived here all my life, although I've traveled a fair bit. We were just talking off air about, some of the locations I've been to in the States and visited around and seen the coastal cities, shall we say, but we haven't quite made it inland. So I suppose journey-wise, my journey's a little bit, well, like any, I suppose, person who runs a business is probably not a straightforward one. I left school and worked for John Lewis in retail, which is a very large department store here in the UK. Started off there as a retail manager and decided that I didn't want to work in retail any longer. I wanted to work in sales. So off I went and worked in sales, which was amazing. Selling pest control of all things. What an amazing experience. So if you ever want to sell anything, sell something completely off the wall is my advice. And that was a great.
Be there.
They will indeed, exactly. So that was a great experience. And then from there, I was sort of quite young at the time. I think I was 24, and I was life was becoming quite serious. And I'm like, life shouldn't be this serious. And one of my friends came into the pub. We was at the pub drinking on a Sunday night and said, usual sort of questions. What are you doing? Where are you going? He's like, I'm off to work abroad for 6 months. I went, you're doing what? He said, yeah, I'm going to go. I booked a holiday and we fly out on Friday and we're just going to happens. I'm going to go work in a bar in Greece. And I was like, what? You're joking. Couldn't believe it. Thought it was absolutely bonkers. Anyway, on the Monday, if anyone who's listened been in had a bad day, they know what I feel like. So I walked in, had a bad day selling, thought this isn't for me. Handed my notice in on the Friday through to Greece and spent 6 months working in a bar. Absolute amazing experience.
Sure.
But whilst I was there, there was a lot of sailing and windsurfing going on, and I've sailed and windsurfed all my life. And I was like, I need to go and teach sailing. So off I went and worked on the beach while I was there, teaching windsurfing and sailing. And then for the next 15 years, really, I went and taught sailing and windsurfing around the world, which was an amazing experience.
I love it.
I got to see a huge amount of stuff.
Sure.
And then when I came back, it was like, well, I probably better get a job now, was the experience that went on.
No.
It was, yeah, you get to the end of that life, really. And, for 10 years, I worked and managed a lot of sailing clubs, worked and helped grow the sport of sailing here in the UK, which was amazing. So did that for a long time. But whilst I was along that journey was when I started thinking there's more to life than just working for someone. So how do I grow as an individual? How do I develop further what I've done? How do I make more money was thought of the process because I was capped where I was. So what I did is I started a photography business and I started selling stuff on Amazon. So I did wedding photography, which was amazing. And I still do the odd wedding. I do about 5 a year because I absolutely love it. It's great fun. You meet lots of different people and you just get to help people on the most exciting day of their life. Like there's nothing not to like. So that was wicked. No, well, yes, there is that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I would think the stress would be out of control for wedding photographers.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? It's the stress that I actually enjoy. So the stress of, making sure everything's right, working with mothers of the brides is really quite stressful, and trying to organize everyone. Anyway, so I've done that for years and I nearly basically, yeah. I just enjoy the stress. I guess is what it is. And so basically what happened was I needed to earn some extra money. We wanted a deposit for a house. I wanted to set up a business. So the wedding photography is a great way of doing that. And then selling products on Amazon was another great way of doing that. So I started off selling silicone watches because they were really big. I don't know, it must have been 10 years ago. So I bought some silicone watches cheap from China, brought them over, bought them for 20 or 30 pence, whatever it was at the time, sold them for £5, £6, £7, make a massive profit per one, reinvested it, recycled, great. Made a decent bit of money and sort of thought that was great, achieved what I needed to do.
Hey, Andy, I might have lost your sound. Can you hear me? It's no big deal. We can always edit it out.
Yes, I can. Is that better?
You were so excited. You were so excited with what you were saying. You accidentally hit the
I mute myself.
I love that, though. I love that because like people don't see, people who are listening to the podcast, like they can't see that not only does Andy have an awesome podcast mic, which if you're watching it via YouTube, you're going to see it. But Andy is very excited about his experiences, and he's very animated in the way he talks, and which is awesome. And I think that he might have accidentally hit his mute button, but he was talking about his photography business and how it's sort of integrated into, I guess, kind of was a segue into the products that he ended up selling. And it sounds like this experience that you had with all the photography probably worked really well for product photography as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, the link of everything we've done moving on is, from a product photography. And I suppose that where this all sort of came about, I did some work with we've got a business partner, started doing some work together. And that's then when this business sort of evolved, if you like. Mm-hmm. So, like a lot of people that have, I don't know, entrepreneur is the fab word, isn't it? But people that have had different businesses, different ideas that migrate from one into the other, you sort of develop. I'm moving my hands again, aren't I? This is dangerous.
I love it.
I'll move it around, so I can't hit it.
I do it too. I just haven't yet. So, and then sometimes you can't see my hand as much the way my camera's positioned. But I'm an animated speaker too, so keep going.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
That's exactly what I should do. So basically what happened was we migrated that and a few different things we were doing into, what did we really want to do? What did we really want to achieve? Which led to where we are today.
Right.
We sort of focused in and zoned in on what that was.
So you have your business partner and you all, I mean, do you think that you would be where you are right now if you hadn't have met that person or hadn't have kind of formed that relationship with your business partner?
No, without a shadow of a doubt. No, it was sort of, we met and we discussed things and there was just a natural progression from what they were doing, what I was doing, that conversation, lots of things happening was, well, this works quite nicely together. How can we do a bit of this, bit of that? Who do we really want to serve? And how do we want to support them and help them? And if we were to do that, what does that look like? How do we go about doing that?
I think that it's great to be independent. Like there's a lot of advantages to being a solo entrepreneur. But when you are working with a partner like that and you're bouncing ideas off of each other and you get the opportunity to do that and there's someone that you really collaborate well with, then I feel like the sum of you all, I know that there's a saying for this, but you two, like the two brains working together is greater than the two individual ones on their own. And that's because that you all have that collaborative relationship. And so it sounds like this relationship is what brought you to Global E-commerce Experts Ltd. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's sort of how that, we was doing a menagerie of different things. We pulled everything into a pot, if you like, and looked at what we were doing that could really focus. And it was like, well, yeah, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to achieve. We're already doing a bit of this. You're already doing a bit of this. Let's merge that together. Let's shape that into something that's really, that can really help people. And that's where, well, who do you want to serve? Well, we want to serve typically American sellers expanding into Europe. That's who we want to serve. And if we want to see them do that successfully, what do we need to do that achieves that in order for them to come over and it be a success?
Right. So this is where Global E-commerce Experts has, I guess, arisen. And how did you come up with that name for this company? Like I said, I always ask this question. I think it's really important as a brand, as someone who loves trademarks and naming. I always like to ask people, well, how'd you come up with the name? What's, were you all brainstorming, or were you just like, okay, this is it. This is what we do. I'd love to know sort of the background of that.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. I think there was a bit of a brainstorming session. I think there were, what is it that we're really trying to achieve? How do it be perceived? And what does that then look like? Mm-hmm. So, we want to, we talk a lot about how we currently help sellers expand from the rest of the world into the EU. That's our core focus. That's our core business, but actually we do want to, in our sort of next three years or so, is to be doing that worldwide. But, that's where the global part comes from. E-commerce that's who we serve, e-commerce sellers. And, we want to make people experts. We want to, get across that, we will make sure we do that professionally for you. That, you can't say we're e-commerce professionals. It didn't quite sound right. So by, we're merging our experience, we're merging all of our years of experience. It does make us experts in our field. And we, so the e-commerce experts, I think, was part of what we really wanted to do and believe in. And we didn't want to focus that in on one niche market. So, we do sort of slightly different bits of the e-commerce journey. And we didn't want to say we were a VAT business or a warehouse business. So we had to make it quite generic to cover those different bases.
So you all are being contacted probably on a daily basis, probably on an hourly basis, from US-based entities who are interested in possibly expanding their e-commerce businesses into the EU. And as a quick aside, Andy, I'm gesturing, you just can't see it. But okay. Why should people consider expanding into the EU? What is the advantage for them? Because as we know, it's going to cost them money to do this, right? Like anytime you expand into a new market. Yep. So there has to be some ROI there. What is that ROI? What are people seeing as being the biggest advantages into looking to the European Union market for their private label e-commerce businesses?
Yeah, I think that the first thing to say is that the EU market as a whole, and there's 5 marketplaces. So there's France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the UK. There are 5 marketplaces. Broadly, the market size is the same size as the North American market when you pull them all together in Europe. So there's 27 countries in the EU, and those 5 marketplaces look after all of those countries. So that's the first thing. So the market is about the same size. So when you're looking at how much you could sell, in broad terms, in theory, you could say, well, we could sell the same amount. Mm-hmm. Now, it never quite works out exactly like that because the marketplaces are much further spread apart. The language barrier in the 5 different countries, 5 different languages is another barrier. And the other countries, Poland, Czech Republic, a lot of other countries where there aren't marketplaces, but there's a lot of buyers. Mm-hmm. So, there's other areas that link into that. So it's not a case of, we'll just put an English listing up and it will cover everyone, because it doesn't. It takes a lot more work. So I think the advantages are, for me, there's several. One, there's a massive market here that is untapped for a lot of products that might not be available here in the UK. The second thing is, if you don't expand your products, somebody else will. That's the next part. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is it is hard work expanding into a new marketplace. Of course it is. You know, it is going to be difficult. There is a huge amount to do, and there are costs that are involved. However, if you are a good sized seller in the US, then you take the same principles, the same methodology you use on that business for the EU marketplaces, and you use the same process. It's not like going from Amazon to eBay, where there's two different marketplaces. You're going from Amazon in the US to Amazon in the UK. The seller centrals look exactly the same. Okay. The information, some of the layout is slightly different in as far as, if you go on the one tab, everything's not quite the same. They roll out things in the States before they roll them out in the EU. So some things aren't available. So for example, the first thing that comes to mind is like the early reviewer program. So that isn't available in the EU yet. Mm-hmm. Promotions is under a different tab. Again, that's it's just about knowing where those differences are. So you're going from one marketplace to the other. If you've made it a success in the States, there's no reason why you use the same methodology, the same principles, the same advertising, keywords, and all information that you currently use. Transfer that information. It's relatively straightforward. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't involve a huge amount of work, and the ROI is a lot smaller to start off with. Mm-hmm. So the ROI starts off smaller, but as the market gets bigger, you get the same ROI roughly as what you'll end up in the States. Mm-hmm. But that takes time.
Right.
So anyone who's launched products in the States will know that actually for the first few shipments, quite often it's just about sales velocity. Get those products out onto the marketplace, sell, build up sales velocity, and then make the money on the remaining shipments after that. It is no different to here in the UK.
That's interesting. So the customer base in the EU, do they have the same demands or more demands than US-based customers? Like, I'm just curious as to sophistication of the consumer in the EU versus the US. Are certain do you notice that customers in the EU, for example, demand, like a higher quality, or maybe they're looking more for organic products or products that are produced sustainably? Do you notice anything like that in the European Union with respect to the consumer demand?
So the ecological, environmentally friendly, sustainable product is critical. Anything that comes in plastic, they're really not interested in. So those sort of sustainable ecological products, or how things come to them, is crucial. They're definitely interested in that. The one big difference that we do know is that returns is significantly less in the European market than what they are. And one of the reasons we believe that is, and this is not a hard fact science, but this is a gut feel, is that in the States, if you want to return something, you just leave it with the doorman. You ask them to pick it up from there. They come and collect it. They take it away. We do not have any serviced properties in the EU particularly. There are a few in London, but much smaller quantities than in the States.
So it's a little more challenging to return something in the EU.
It's just a pain to return something. So they've got to take it to the post office, which means they typically don't do that. Although, interestingly, they are starting to develop partnerships with stores where you could take that back and do your returns at a store. So I think that will change over the next 3 to 5 years. But initially, at the moment, the number of returns is significantly less. But they definitely want higher quality products. So if they want a cheap Chinese product, they're happy to go on eBay and buy that. If they want a good quality product, they shop on Amazon for that. And that's how the market differs. If they want a second-hand product, cheap product, they'll get it on eBay because it doesn't really matter. If they want a quality product, they'll shop on Amazon.
Right. Let me ask you this, and this might be a little bit of a diversion, but I'm curious as to how you're seeing the implications of Brexit with all of this. Now, forgive me, because I'm a little behind on the news these days. I'm trying to like distance myself a little bit from media. But it's still some, I know that the conversation has been very, there's been a lot of conversation about Brexit in the US. And I'm curious as to how you foresee, assuming that this proceeds, how this could impact your business specifically, and how it could possibly impact sellers who are interested in going into the EU and selling, but may not then have the same. It might be a little different in the UK if Brexit actually happens. Now, of course, you might say it's never going to happen, So I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, though.
Yeah, so Brexit, there's probably the second word I might use after Brexit is mess. Brexit is, I think, has been a bit of a, it's probably not our most glorious moment, shall we say. I think that the Brexit situation is something that's just ongoing, where people voted for it or didn't vote for it. And there's lots of discussion, we want another referendum, we want this, we want that. The long and short of it is the UK population, as a democratic society, voted to leave the EU. That's the fundamental key point. Whether we agree or disagree with it is another conversation, really. And we now have to prepare for the options coming forward. So we were originally supposed to leave the EU on the 29th of May, right, or 31st of March, sorry, going completely crazy.
Yeah, just recently.
Yeah, so the end of March when we were originally supposed to leave. Now, the Prime Minister, Theresa May at the time, basically created a agreement with the EU and said, this is our Brexit deal. She then came back to Parliament and said, here's the deal I've agreed with the EU. And basically the Parliament, who decides, what happens and what's legal, basically said, that deal's rubbish, we're not voting for it. So we don't want it. So that went backwards and forwards a huge amount of times. And then what happened is that we then went back to the EU and said, this isn't working. We need to extend it. We extended it to a date in June. And that date was around about now, give or take, actually. Yeah. Oh, no. But then basically what happened was Theresa May, as the Prime Minister, still couldn't get agreement from Parliament. So she went to the EU and said, I can't get agreement. We need a much further date further down the line. And that date is now the 31st of October this year.
And she's just resigned, right?
Okay, yeah. So
she's like, I'm over this, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and she has been given what I would call a poison chalice. So she didn't actually vote. She never wanted to leave the EU. She wanted to stay in the EU. And the politicians that actually wanted to leave said, oh, no, I don't want to be Prime Minister. You do it. So she sort of got given the poison chalice as far as I'm concerned. I think she's done a great job. And I think whoever did it would have been in the same situation, pretty much. So we've got a new date of leaving on the 31st of October. There's still several options. We can leave with a deal, which basically means we get a deal from the EU, and whatever that deal is, we leave on the 31st of October and we continue trading. The first thing to say is that when we do leave the EU, there's a 2-year window to transfer. So nothing will happen on the 31st of October. We've still got 2 years to implement everything before it actually goes live and nothing happens, right? So there's still a caveat in there.
Like a transition period, like a buffer period, sort of.
Totally that. Exactly that. Now, what could happen on the 31st of October is that we don't agree a deal and we get something called a no deal. A no deal means we leave the EU without a deal, and therefore everything we know as is basically goes. So, for example, the one thing that a lot of sellers use is what we call a customs union. So what happens is you bring your goods to us or to the UK, and Amazon ships your goods through the European Fulfillment Network or Pan-European to all the different countries, no problems at all. You just pay one import VAT and import duty coming into the UK, Nice and
That's the
simple.
current situation, right? That's how
Current
that,
situation.
okay. I think I
Yeah.
see where this might be going.
Yeah. Now, if we get a no deal, what would happen is you send your goods to the UK. You then pay taxes and VAT coming into the UK. If you then wanted to ship your goods to the EU, you then have to pay import VAT and duty going into those countries. So that's what could happen should we leave the EU with no deal. Now that's a very big if, because the majority of countries wouldn't want that, because it doesn't matter whether you're Germany. And if you think about Germany with BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, all of these high luxury brands that sell a huge amount of cars to the UK, their prices will go up 15% overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, clearly, they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
The German government won't want that to happen. So there's a lot at play to enable us to stay in the customs union, which my personal opinion is will probably happen.
So let me get clarification here.
Yeah.
There's a customs union that's kind of separate and apart, right? So in this way, all of the entities in Europe or countries in Europe that are part of the European Union can kind of play together. And then if Brexit is triggered officially in October, UK could still potentially be a part of this customs union. And so that would therefore assist with customs, like, I guess, having to pay all those additional fees. And at the end of the day, it would help the sellers.
Totally.
Okay.
And that's
I just make
exactly
sure I understood that.
Yeah. And then the best way to look at that from a state's point of view is that if you imagine you've got all the different states around the US, and then one of those states decides it doesn't want to be part of the US anymore, every time you send something to that state, there would be import duty, just like there is when you send goods to the States anyway. So, and the reality is that one state, would still want to be part of that process because they lose money, and the others would as well. So why would they do that? So I think that the Brexit is a big red herring, and a lot of customers said to us, well, Brexit is a big issue. And I said, look, until it's signed and sealed, don't put anything off, because you could still, we keep extending it, and all you're doing is delaying your business and your profits in order because, this might happen. Just get on with it. If you wait for a government,
It'll, I think that's one of those situations where people put the onus on the fact that they are afraid of change on something external, whereas they're actually just scared to pull the trigger. Do you know what I mean? Like that, because the concern about Brexit is so lofty, and it may or may not ever happen. And at the end of the day, it sounds like the member, the UK and the European Union are going to take measures to make any type of Brexit, like the practical implications, as harmless as possible, obviously, right? Like, because we don't want to see anything that's going to hurt UK's economy or the European Union as a whole, because at the end of the day, if your all's economy is impacted really negatively by this, then it's gonna percolate, or it's gonna, we're gonna feel it here in the US. So it seems like there are certain measures that are going to be taken to hopefully prevent that from happening.
Yeah, exactly that. And I mean, there is still one thing at play here. And one of those things is that the new Prime Minister, because Theresa May has stood down and we're looking for a new Prime Minister, there could be a new play here where they say, actually, we want another referendum. So they could say, well, actually, we want another referendum, and actually Brexit might not even happen at all.
Sure.
So, I think there are several things. You don't say, expanding based on Brexit may or may not happen, because at the end of the day, it probably won't. It probably will. But if it does, it will probably be business as usual, because that's what everyone in the EU needs.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants and needs.
Yeah.
So how does a business know when they're ready to look into expanding into the European Union? Are there any just sort of factors, or I know there's probably not a checklist, check this box, or, add this
Yeah.
up. If your numbers add up to between 1 and 5, it means you're not ready yet. Between 5 and 10, maybe you're close to ready. You know what I mean? So, but generally, what should sellers think about when they're starting to consider selling in the European Union? How do they know they're ready?
Yeah, I think I think actually a checklist is something we should create.
Maybe
I think
maybe that was a good idea.
No, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that, Suzi. Thank you very much. Hold on 1 second. Let me just shout to the team and let them start doing it now.
Like a little quiz. People love quizzes, right? So you can do a little quiz that set, you add up the answers to the questions. And I was joking at first, but the more I thought about it, I was like, actually,
that's a good idea. How do they know? And I think a lot of people get approached by Amazon direct to say, hey, look, you're selling well in the States. Why don't you expand to Europe? So that's one way that it could happen. But I think if you're listening to this and you're sat there and you've got an Amazon business and you're selling well in the States and you've managed to create a business that is working where, you're selling products, you're having to work at it still, of course, because you're always going to have to work at it. But, you've probably reached 6 figures and you're selling that on a regular basis. It's not just at Christmas, I've had a little spike. You can genuinely maintain momentum throughout the year. And we know there's a cycle, of course there is. But if you've got to 6 figures, you've got, you've got a sustainable business in the States. What you don't want to do is to expand to Europe and create a complete diversion, take your eye off the game in the States, and you drop the ball there and there at the expense of another market. That's not what you want to do. The other way to tell is that if you've got a unique product and lots of European buyers are buying your product and you're shipping it from Amazon in the States to the EU, that's another great way. Along with if you've got a website and you're selling products to people in the EU, that's another great ticking point. If you're selling those products over here, then you just need to just send products to a fulfillment house, whether it's us or other places, it's up to you. Whether you send it to Amazon, it doesn't actually take a lot to make it happen and make it work. So my sort of thought process is, do you have a sustainable business in the US, North America? Probably selling 6 figures or more would be ideal. I think if you haven't got to 6 figures, then, it's difficult because you might not have enough traction and experience to be able to cope with diversifying into another market or profit, to be able to open up and put more stock in another market. And obviously there's a caveat there that if you've only been going for a month and you've sold 20,000 in the first month, then you might be ready as well. So there's a bit of a caveat there.
Yeah. So that's why this quiz is important. That's why you need to do this quiz, right? Because a few of those those checkpoints you could get 3 points to, right? But if someone has like massive sales in their first month, maybe they get 2 points on their quiz.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of considerations, and it's obviously a case by case situation. But I think that's really interesting, and it sounds like in most situations, businesses probably need to. It sounds like your big thing though is like 6 figures. Sorry, it's hard to put like a dollar sign on it though, I guess.
It is, but for me, 6 figures is a good basing point.
Yeah.
The other thing is, do you have time to make it happen? So, it's all very well saying, well, let's expand and put stuff out there. But that's like saying, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to open an eBay store. I'm going to put all my stock on it, and then I'm not going to do any work on it whatsoever. And we all know that we have to work at it to make it happen. And, we provide solutions around that to support that. So if you're thinking, well, I'm selling really well, I haven't got time to do it, we can support that. But a lot of people, if they're doing 6 figures, probably need to do some of that themselves because they might not have the profit in there to enable further account management to make that happen.
Yeah.
So,
that makes a lot of sense.
That's, so time and energy. if you don't have the energy and you're not sure, then don't do it. But research the market. Look at the market, see what people are selling. Is your product unique? If your product is unique, get it over here. If it's a Me Too product and you're selling the same as everybody else, don't rush.
Your fidget spinners need to.
Yeah.
Your garlic presses probably, they better be pretty special, right?
Exactly. If you're a private label seller, you've got unique products, you're onto a winner.
Yeah.
If you're selling Me Too products, that everywhere, dog grooming brushes, don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Right. You better already have a super strong brand, I would think, in the US before you would consider doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that, the brand is one thing. The problem is with marketplaces like Amazon is that the brand can sometimes get lost because, the Amazon brand is the brand and they don't necessarily want your brand. I mean, you're never going to compete with the likes of Amazon, of course you're not. But, if all of a sudden you start seeing, the Nike, a new product emerge that becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, that would be a problem for Amazon. But at the same, so they're never going to give your brand, it's hard to think of brands that have come from Amazon. Mm-hmm. People have started from Kickstarter, developed a brand and sold on Amazon. They've developed a brand off and brought it onto Amazon. But there's very few people that have created a brand on Amazon and then come off and become a household name.
Right.
Now, there are some examples of those, and I can think of a few, but, that's so having an established brand isn't as critical because when you come to the UK, they're not going to know your brand anyway. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, even if you sell £10 million in the US, which is a big seller, they're probably still not going to know your brand if you come over here. So that's not as a bigger issue. But if you've got a product that you're selling on Amazon and you have got a big competitor, there's a big seller, but there isn't a big competitor over here, or they haven't expand before they do. That's the other side of that. Mm-hmm. Be ahead of the market rather than behind it. And there are two other marketplaces we've not really talked about, but India and Australia are two massive marketplaces and massive opportunities. Someone said to me, Australia's like being on Amazon in 1998, So if you get on there now,
actually sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be slow, but you're ahead of everybody else. And India, the amount of population, they're all English speaking,
right.
That's a massive opportunity if people aren't doing it. Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest obstacles that you are seeing sellers face when they move into the European Union? And the reason I'm asking this question is I kind of want to know some horror stories because horror stories are how we learn, right? We learn from other people's mistakes or making our own mistakes and being like, whoa, I'm not gonna do that again. But I would love to, I would love for people to kind of know what you have seen other sellers face in the past, because that helps us learn what to avoid in the future.
Okay, so the biggest thing is being compliant, and that covers a whole load of different things. So the first thing is that if you're not VAT registered when you expand into Europe, then Amazon will shut your store down. In fact, at the moment, so if you're already selling on Amazon, and if you're listening to this and you're selling in the UK, EU, and you're not registered for VAT, the chances are you will be shut down by Amazon, because there's a law in place in the UK and Germany that basically says, Amazon, if these guys aren't registered for VAT, you're paying their VAT. So Amazon, of course, basically says you have to have it. Now, if you're a new seller, you can't register without putting that information in there.
Okay.
But there are still sellers that are being shut down on a regular basis because they're not compliant, because they don't have a VAT number. So that's the part, and that's crucial. So that's one part of compliance.
Okay.
The other part of the compliance is products. So are your products compliant with the EU marketplace? So have you had them tested Have they had a responsible person look at them? Are they authorized for sale in the EU marketplace? Are they CE marked? And there's a lot of different things there depending on your product. So if you're sending electrical goods, they need to be CE marked. And well, there's lots of products that actually need to be CE marked. So if they're not CE marked, then Amazon won't hold them and they'll kick them out and they'll basically strand your inventory in Amazon.
Yeah.
If the products, if you've got health supplements, nutrients, all those different things, that powders and cosmetics, all of those things also have to be passed by EU regulation. So all that has to be passed. Now, what happens is if they come into the EU and they get to customs and you don't have all that stuff in place, we all know with customs that sometimes that just goes through and it goes through no problem at all. But if you get caught, what'll happen is that just gets caught and held at customs. And like the States, you get anything held at customs, they accrue charges at a rate that is exponentially very expensive.
Yay.
So you get basically, what could be, let's say $100 worth of products is $100 a day to keep in customs, which is absolutely bonkers, but they'll do it. So, they won't let them go. They'll either send them back or they'll say they need to be legally compliant before they go. So the compliance side is the most important part of making it as safe and as enjoyable. And they're the biggest hurdles. So getting a VAT, how do we get a VAT number? Obviously, we can help with that. We can do that for you, no problems at all. It's relatively straightforward. If you register for VAT, and we do that for free, so we can do that for people, no problems at all. It's easy. It's straightforward. It's simple. Yes, you have to send us some documents. Yes, we have to send that to HMRC, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Yes, there's some things we have to do, but we can make that easy for you. We can help with making sure your supplements and your electrical goods and everything else is done correctly. We can point you in the direction of the best people to speak to make sure tick. The other thing is speak to Amazon before you ship the goods over. Speak to Amazon. Hey, I sell these goods. I want to bring them to the UK. Are they compliant? You cannot sell fur products, as an example, in the UK. But you can in France. So different marketplaces, different things.
Wow. And you can help guide people through all of that compliance. That seems like it could be a complete beast in and of itself.
Well, exactly that. And that's the problem. So a lot of the big hurdles people say, Andy, it's just too complicated. It's too difficult. I can't deal with it. And that's when they might say, well, yeah, exactly that. They might say, Andy, you deal with it, which is absolutely fine. And of course we can do that. However, what we have developed is a training series and that helps people through that. So, for example, you can go. We've got a training series that you can register for, but it's absolutely free at the moment. So you can go along to it, and basically you can go through step by step and basically sign up. And then what happens is on day 1, here's everything you need to know. Day 2, here's everything you need to know. 3, 4, 5, and we give you every single thing you need to do to be able to expand successfully. And it's all available on our website. And, you can just go ahead and register for it. Really simple.
Yeah. And it's, the domain is www.expandtotheeu.com. And what I'll do, Andy, is I'll put that in our show notes so people can access it easily.
Fantastic.
In addition to taking that training, which you all are doing free right now, which is super generous. I saw it on the website and I was like, whoa, that looks awesome. What are just a couple more things that you suggest to sellers in the US who are considering selling it in the EU? What are a couple of things that you suggest that will kind of reduce their friction and help ensure their success? What can people do?
So once you've expanded and you've got your products here, you've got the VAT, you've put products into, there's a couple of different things you can do. So obviously have goods, in FBA, you might want to put them in there, but certainly put the majority of products in there for FBA. You obviously have Prime turned on. Really, the thing of making the difference is no different to the US. It's sales velocity. Getting sales velocity straight away is the single most important thing you can do. Yes, keywords, put pay-per-click on, run some promotions, get the stock selling. And, you know, for me, that's the critical part of making it a success. Anything outside of that becomes secondary. The turn on pay-per-click, make it simple, review the data, analyze the data, make sure you're looking at the data and spending time on it. And the single most important thing, like anything, is making time for the expansion and making time for the data to analyze it and see what's working and what's not and change it. Does that answer that? I think that was sort of
it does, yeah. No, and it's really important. And what I'm hearing here is don't get so intimidated by going into the EU, because at the end of the day, there's so many tools that are parallel to what it's being offered on the US platform, and anything that seems super complex or more scarier, like the compliance aspect of it and VAT specifically, people should reach out to you guys on that if they want to and kind of outsource the scary parts. But what people know how to do on the US platform, they're going to most likely have those same available tools on the EU platform as well.
Yeah, the tools, as we're saying earlier, the Amazon Seller Central is exactly the same. The same things are available. So, you know, if you look at the pay-per-click, the campaigns, it's all the same. You know, you're looking at reviewing the data, the reports are the same. So, you know, you've got all of that information. If you can do that, some people just say to us, Andy, you just deal with VAT. We'll deal with everything else. That's absolutely fine. No problems at all. You know, but actually when we do VAT and we look at the data and we see what you're selling and how much you're selling, we can actually see and compare that to what other people are doing, because we're looking at thousands of sellers of data every day. So we can look at that and say, well, actually, you know, here's what we're learning from that. You know, here's what you could do from that. And here's how you can improve what you're doing based on the data. And that's really powerful, because, you know, it's for us, you know, we want to help people expand. Yes. You know, VAT is one part of what we do, you know, but that doesn't, just because we do the VAT doesn't mean that people will successfully expand because we've done their VAT.
Yeah.
So, you know, because some people register for VAT and then never ship anything, or they ship stuff and they go, well, I've put it in Amazon, it's not selling. Well, you know, you have to work at that and make that happen. So it's really important that, you know, we want to work with sellers to make sure they successfully expand. And if that's a conversation with one of the team over the phone that says, well, you know, what's working, what's not working, well, okay, and they can give some advice and some top tips, that's what they're here for, as well as in your VAT. They're speaking to sellers just like those listening today on a daily basis. You know, they're understanding what they're selling, what they're not selling, what's working in the market, what's not working in the market. And they can give some top tips for you, no problems at all. There's all of that available, all as part of the service, because we don't want to get to the end of the year and you say, well, Andy, we don't want to carry on with the business because we haven't sold anything. And that I feel like we haven't served those clients in the best way possible, because it's almost like it's a failure. And I take that as a failure against us because we failed to expand that person. And that I find difficult to deal with when that happens, because we failed that customer and we want to make sure they successfully expand.
Right. And everyone has their role to play in all of this. And people can't just automatically think, well, I'll turn on that here, we're going to be good to go. Or I'm going to ship products in, we're going to be good to go. I mean, dealing in e-commerce and working on Amazon specifically is not a get rich quick thing. I mean, it's something that people really have to work at and study, you know, the numbers after they've made so many sales, and it's an ongoing process. Andy, let me ask you, what is the best way for people to reach out to your team if they do think that they're interested in expanding into the EU? And I know that we talked about the free training that you have, which I think is awesome. And like I said, super generous. So what are there any other ways that people can reach out to you guys, or is really just going to that domain or that URL the best way to start?
Yes, I mean that's one way. From on there, you'll get our sort of blog, podcast, and vlog there as well. So that's sort of what I would call our content site. That's our free site that basically is there to help people successfully expand with all of our information on. In order to get in contact with us outside of there, we have a website, another website, which is our standard shop window, if you like, which is Global E-commerce Experts.com, and e-commerce has a hyphen in it. So you can get us on there. We've got a website which shows all the different things we do, from the VAT to the warehousing to the account management, translations, everything else there that really will help seed you when you expand. Obviously, we've got social. We've got a Facebook group where we have a group just for our sellers, which is, once you're one of our clients, we have an expansion group where the group is focused as a community to help other people expanding. And it's all focused on expanding.
Cool.
And we've also got a Facebook page, Global E-commerce Experts, along with an Instagram, a YouTube, and everything else that you usually expect from a business, I suppose, these days.
We'll link to all those, so don't worry. Yeah, we'll link to all those. That's great information. People can access that. And I did take a poke around on the expandtotheeu.com page, and there's just, on both of your sites, there's just really a wealth of information that people can check out and, not even go further. It seems like you all are just very generous with that. So people should definitely go check all that information out.
Yeah, exactly that. We believe that we want to make it a success for people. There's a huge amount of information out there, and we want to say, look, if you're going to expand, here's all the information. We're up front with it. Here's what you need to know. Go through the training, listen to the podcast, listen to the information. We've got lots of great information and advice there. And if you like what you hear and you think it's all great and you want to expand, we'd love you to use us. Of course we would. There are thousands of other providers out there, and I'm not going to say don't go and use them if you haven't liked what you heard. But if you have liked what you've heard, obviously we'd love to serve you and help you to expand successfully.
Awesome. Well, Andy, I want to thank you again so much for participating in this podcast and also YouTube video. And it's going to be really awesome, anyone who's watching it on YouTube, because they're going to get to see Andy and how animated he is. And like I said, I'm the same way. It's just mine is a little, it's like under you just can't see it because of the positioning of the camera. So, but thank you so much. And I think that we will leave it with this. We've gone probably about an hour, and hopefully people will be reaching out to you as they start expanding their e-commerce horizons. It sounds like the EU is going to be so huge in the next few years. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Suzi. Yeah, I want to thank you very much for having us. It's been great to talk to you beforehand as well. It's great to hear your enthusiasm for e-commerce and what you're doing for all the sellers listening as well, because this is just great, valuable content that they can get. So thank you very much for all of your time and effort doing exactly that for sellers.
My pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Andy.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you very much.
Go to the pub for me. It's 6 hours ahead, right? So it's pub time. Somewhere.
It is pub time. Don't generally go to the pub very often, though, unfortunately.
Not these days.
Not these days. I'm busy here, but that's how it goes.
Yeah, post pub days just aren't as easy as they used to be.
They definitely aren't, especially when you live in a city like we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah.
When you live in a city, you can get the tube home or the metro or whatever. It's pretty simple. Whereas now you have to drive home. It's not as much fun.
Yeah.
And certainly not legal.
Gotta love the suburbs.
Yeah, quite right.
Thank you so much.
No, genuinely, thank you very much. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks very much.